Hey, and welcome to the Meditations and Musings podcast. I'm Elena Lipson. I'm a mama, I'm a wife, and I'm the founder of the Divine Self-Care Circle membership and the Virtual Retreat Academy. I don't believe that you have to sacrifice your body, your health, or your family in order to create true abundance and prosperity. I believe in living based on the divine feminine metrics of success, and these include pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. Each week, I'll bring you 1 to 2 new episodes. One of these will be a guided meditation that you don't have to do on the meditation pillow, and the other will be a conversation to help you access your inner wisdom, to ignite abundance, and inspire others to do the same. I invite you to join me on this journey back to the magic of a divinely aligned and well cared for you. And now, join me for today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Meditations and Musings podcast. This is Elena Lipson, your self-care coach and mentor. And today we are talking about you. Yup, you. Because as overwhelmed as you might be feeling, as behind as you might be feeling, as frustrated as you might be feeling, I really want to let you know that you are not broken, that you may just be burned out. And we sometimes don't notice exactly how burned out we are until we are way past the breaking point and we are actually falling apart. So been there, done that, can talk about it for a long time. But today I want to share with you some of the symptoms or signals or things to look out for in your body, mind, and spirit, and what that might look and feel like in those 3 areas when you are either in, deeply in, about to go in, or really trying to get out of that burnt out mode. Now, first, let me preface this by saying, I don't think that, or I don't believe that anything you go through is wasted. I believe that the journey is the journey, that the ups, the downs, the in-betweens, the doubt, the resistance, the resentment, all of it is meant to serve you in some way. Whether it becomes part of the next book you're writing, whether it becomes a lesson that you're teaching your children, whether it becomes a point of contrast for you to compare where you don't want to be anymore, and a new story that you're ready to tell, it is not wasted. So first and foremost, I want you to release any guilt that you might have around feeling burnout, around feeling, around not feeling happy, joy all the time. And I don't think we're meant to feel happy, joy all the time. But there are antidotes that I want you to start exploring. And I'm going to give you specific tools to get into the antidotes to this burnout. This is really the basis of a lot of the work that I do with women, both in the courses that I offer, the coaching that I do, and the membership circle that I have that we're going into our 5th year, which means that there's a lot to talk about, which means that self-care is not a given for everyone in our lives, that sometimes you just don't even know where to start, that sometimes washing your hair in the morning can feel like a luxurious self-care event in your life, right? Depending on where you are. I feel like busyness has become a buzzword, an expectation, and that we are so overwhelmed with all of the choices and all of the obligations, both financial and personal, that we have, that we are forgetting that the oxygen mask needs to go on first. And over time, this lack of any sort of practices around nourishing yourself, around treating self-care as medicine for your soul, your body, your spirit, becomes sort of this, I'll get to it someday, or when I can afford it. And again, if you're putting on that oxygen mask, it means that there's something happening, right? That plane is in trouble. It's going down, right? So I want to help you to start exactly where you are. You don't have to be anywhere other than where you are right now in order to understand that you are not broken, but perhaps you're just burned out. And so let's start with the body. There's different things that happen in your body. And again, I know this personally. If you've watched any of my videos on my website or YouTube, you know that I went through my own personal physical struggle where I was diagnosed with precancerous colon cells, where I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Epstein-Barr, which basically never goes away. It's in your body, which I don't believe. I believe you can heal yourself of these things. But I'm also not glib about it. I understand that there's things that I had to do and foods that I had to sacrifice for over time. There's new practices that I had to implement in my life. There are promises that I had to make to myself and keep. And that wasn't the easiest thing to do because life, it gets in the way. So my body was experiencing, when I was going through my own burnout, I was experiencing lots of symptoms in my body. I did not really even understand what adrenal fatigue was. I didn't understand what autoimmune disease was. Definitely didn't want to even think about what cancer meant for my body at all. But really, when it came down to it, I knew that I had to start making changes, which is sadly when we as human beings, for some reason, we're programmed to only make positive changes when we're suffering, right? Why are we programmed that way? So hopefully I can share some things with you today and through the journey of this podcast and the work that I do that will help you to either forgive yourself for the pitfalls that you have fallen into, and also to find a way out of them and get the support that you need, both in your personal life and your work and in your relationships. So some things to look out for are I wrote 3 things down, but of course this is, we can talk about health and wellness and consciousness around it for a long time. But the basics is, are you feeling tired all the time? Like, are you feeling like you are at any given point during the day? If someone said, hey, do you want to take a nap? You'd be like, oh, yes, please. Let me just find a bed and a blanket and a warm pillow. And maybe not even that. I just need to lay down. So are you feeling always exhausted? Now, when I was going through this myself, it seemed like a logical place to be because I had a toddler and, he wasn't sleeping through the night yet. I was sort of still nursing, and there was many reasons why I should feel tired, why it was socially acceptable to feel tired. But I knew within my own body that I wasn't feeling like the normal tired. I was just exhausted, right? The second thing I was experiencing was I was pushing through the exhaustion. I was pushing through the pain that I was feeling in my body. I had some of the worst pain in my belly that I'd ever experienced. I didn't know what was happening, which added to my stress levels of feeling concerned about my health and what it meant for me as a mom and how am I going to go on, and I needed to run my business, and just all these questions came up. I was constantly pushing through. So this isn't exactly a physical symptom in your body. It's more of a mindset. It's like, yes, my body's experiencing this, but I'm going to push through it anyway because you feel like you have to be strong and tough and superwoman. Instead of really stopping and asking for help, which I eventually was forced to do because I just couldn't handle the pain anymore, I did end up going to see a series of doctors who really didn't understand what was happening either. So they didn't understand autoimmune until I finally went to a naturopath who just, took one look at me and she's like, I think we need to do this blood test for autoimmune stuff. So that was really where the beginning of my healing journey started, was identifying what was actually going on. But before that, I was really pushing through a lot of the symptoms because I wanted to be the strong mom. I wanted to be the person who had it together, who had dinner on the table, my business running and money coming in, and being a good wife to my husband, who I was feeling quite resentful of, actually, which I'll share with you in the next section about the mind, your mindset around burnout. So pushing through, being exhausted, and then understanding that your adrenaline, right? So that's where adrenal fatigue comes from. It's like this constant state of heightened stress, which causes adrenaline to run in your body. And we're not running in the forest or in the jungle away from a beast anymore, like as our ancient primitive relatives were, right? So we are just causing ourselves stress. We have external stress. We have the stress of expectations unmet. We have stress of jealousy. We have stress of not making enough money. We have stress of paying the rent and the mortgage, right? Those are stresses that are real for us right now. But if we're not doing the things that we need to do to help balance those out, and we're constantly running in a state of this underlying adrenaline rush, then our adrenals do get burned out. And that's where you start experiencing that massive level of exhaustion, and you just can't feel like yourself. So that's how you can experience physical burnout in your body. And that's just a tip of the iceberg because, everybody experiences it a little differently. And sometimes when you feel stuck in that cycle, it gets even worse. And it just becomes a cascade of physical symptoms. So I totally have deep, deep compassion because I was there. I have deep humility because I was there. I never thought I'd be someone who was feeling that burnout, but I just felt like I was having an out of body experience most of the time. And I would just have slept all day if I could have. The second area that you might want to look at in terms of, am I burnt out? Is that what's happening here? Is about the stories that are happening in your mind, right? That mindset of burnout. One of the first things that happened that I noticed with myself and with my clients and the women that I work with is this low level resentment, this buzz of resentment that's constantly going. And the way you can tell that's happening is eye rolls to your partner, lack of wanting to be intimate, lack of just that joyful expectation of them coming in the door, right? That resentment is something that really affects your intimacy levels and your connection on a daily basis. And that resentment comes from holding things in, not speaking what you really mean, not having the difficult conversations, and starting to hold in. It comes from compromising too much of yourself in your relationship to where you don't even recognize yourself anymore. That's one of the big ones. The other one is lack of inspiration. You just don't want to do anything new. You don't want to create anything. You're not feeling inspired to show up in a way that, sometimes I remember I went through a period where I'm like, I don't have to color my hair and I could just wear whatever. And I wasn't doing the things that make me feel like myself. I have a very big craving for beauty way, for doing my hair, doing my makeup in a way that feels good. And I don't do a lot, but I love dressing in clothes that make me feel good. I love having sacred spaces in my home and clearing the space of clutter, but you sort of just lose that inspiration. You just start doing the bare minimum and enough to maybe fool those around you. But internally, you might be feeling really uninspired. And that can lead to sadness and depression. And again, we're not talking about clinical depression, chemical depression here. That's something that I would highly suggest you go get some support for and talk to someone, talk to a professional counselor that you trust, and maybe check in if you are feeling profound sadness over time. There might be something else going on a chemical level that I have zero. I'm not diagnosing anything here. I'm talking about what happens when you are in this slow burnout phase, right? You're just not inspired. You could be feeling sad about the way your life is and maybe about the way you want it to be. So you aren't in a place of gratitude, right? Instead, you're looking at how things are that are making you unhappy. So it's this mindset. And the final thing that really goes with that is this lack of creativity. You're just really, again, doing that bare minimum. You're not inspired to try something new. You're not feeling like life has something to offer you beyond the normal stuff, right? And again, phases like this are totally normal in life. It's not always about everything being incredible. But if you're finding yourself having a very difficult time getting into gratitude for what is, then you're in a mindset of burnout, and it's something that's very real. The final area where you might be exploring burnout is in your spiritual life. And the three areas are my first indication that I'm misaligned in my spiritual practices or my spiritual life. I'm feeling maybe burnt out, is that I, first of all, stop doing the practices that make me anchor into my gratitude. But I stop hearing that intuitive voice, or I feel like I'm not hearing it because it's always there. Your intuition, that internal, guidance system is always there for you. But there are things that get in the way, right? When you're spending too much time watching TV or getting distracted by social media or watching the news too much, or spending time with people who aren't aligned with your highest purpose or are very negative, or you're not doing the things to really nourish and heal yourself on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And you're starting to really feel disconnected from that highest part of yourself that is intuitive, that allows you to trust yourself, even when other people disagree, right? That's a very empowered way of being. But when you're burned out, that spiritual connection tends to get very sparse, like it's held on by a thread if there at all. But the cool thing is that it's always there. It is inside you all the time. There's just things that get in the way of it. And it's about clearing those blocks, right? The second thing that you might be experiencing if you're feeling that burnout is feeling isolated, feeling like no one is there around you or for you, or maybe you don't feel like you have anyone you can call on. Maybe you don't have a community of others around you who you can say, hey, I'm feeling really shitty today. Can I just, do you have time to chat, or going out for a walk, or meeting a friend for coffee or tea? You begin to tell yourself stories that other people are too busy, or that, you just don't feel like reaching out and asking for help. That's just like self-isolation. It's a very natural thing that we do because we don't want to burden each other, even though if a friend called you and asked for help, you would be there in a second. Right? But then when it comes to meeting your needs, you start to worry that you're not worthy of that time. And it might be such a deep kind of underlying fear that you can't even really acknowledge it until you're really, really in it. And the other thing is that it kind of goes with isolation, but you're feeling alone. You're feeling like you're the one who has to do everything. You're feeling like you're the one taking care of everyone else. If you do have a priority list of people, you might be last on that list. So that when it comes to doing things for yourself, you keep talking yourself out of it. And that makes you feel like you're actually disconnected from spirit, right? So one of my main priorities, one of my main ways of being in life is that I feel connected to divine spirit, whether it's through nature or through my meditation practice or through dance. I feel like there's a reason that I was born. And when you're feeling burned out on a spiritual level, you feel alone. Like, what's the point here, right? Like, what's the purpose? You're feeling like that light, that purpose, that reason that you're here starts to really dim to the point where you can barely see it, feel it, or sense it. And so feeling alone is different than isolated, where you're not feeling worthy of getting that support on a spiritual level, but you're feeling actually alone, like you're doubting and questioning that there's a purpose, right? And when a person lacks purpose or living in a purposeful way, because I don't think that you have to be like someone who's so clear on your life purpose that you know exactly why you were born. What I feel is even more important than that is living with purpose. That everything you do, that all the connections that you have, that there's a purpose for your life, that there's a purpose for the people in your life, the good ones, the ones that you connect with and are easy to connect with, and the challenging ones. If you live with the idea that there is a purpose for the things that happen in your life, that's called synchronicity. That's called alignment. And that's when you start to feel like, you know what, I don't need to know the reason this is happening, but I trust that there is a reason that this is happening. That's the opposite of spiritual burnout. That's spiritual connection. So let's just review that real quickly. And I wonder if you've identified with these points so far. And if you have, wonderful. You're starting to realize that this isn't such an alone situation. I've been through this. You're going through this. So many of the women that I work with have gone through this. And that you're not broken. That perhaps you're just burnt out. You're feeling exhaustion, you're feeling like you're pushing through, you're living with a high level of stress that's causing your adrenaline to pump all the time. Those are the symptoms in your body. In your mind, you're feeling resentful. You're feeling a lack of inspiration or creativity. And on a spiritual level, you're feeling disconnected from your intuition, your GPS. You're feeling isolated and alone or lack of purpose. So what do you do? I know that one of the places that I always teach my clients and the ladies I work with to start is with gratitude. But sometimes gratitude can be really difficult to get to if you're in that place of burnout. So first and foremost, I invite you to even just think about gratitude. Is there something, someone that you can start to even feel a flicker of gratitude for? And one of the tools that I give women to work with, and one of the things that I teach most of the time, and that I get asked to talk about most of the time, is a practice that I started 10 years ago. And you've heard me talk about this before on the podcast. It's the magic morning practice. It's a 3-step practice that I do every morning. Like, give me 3 minutes and call me in the morning. Like, that's how I prescribe it. It's almost like a prescription. It's an antidote for burnout. It starts slowly, but once it kicks in, it is incredible. And I want to give it as a gift to you. There's a couple of ways you can access it. If you're following me on Instagram, you can go to my link on my bio page and click the link, and you'll see right there it says 3-step magic morning practice. Or you can head over to my website, elenalipson.com/gift. And right there is a link. You just put in your name and email address, and right away, I'll send you a link that is all about the 3-step magic morning practice. In about 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a download of multiple suggestions and many ways that you can, even if you only have 3 minutes, I promise you, if you trust this and you follow the process, in just 3 minutes, you can do it for longer, but if you're thinking to yourself, I don't have time for this, I promise you, the ripple effect in your life is going to be powerful, important, worthy of your time. So I really invite you to try this. You can try it right now. I know it says magic morning practice, but you can try it. Now, I started doing it in the morning because I believe that the way you start your day is the way you show up in your life. And when I started practicing the magic morning practice, what started happening was I noticed I just became a little more patient with my son, who was a toddler. I became a little bit more willing to have a conversation that I didn't agree with my husband. I became a little bit more excited about trying something new. It just started to have this interesting ripple effect in other areas of my life. Today, this morning, I did about an hour long. I wrote in my journal. I wrote a letter to my dad, actually, who passed away years ago, but yesterday was his birthday, so I really wanted to connect. I wrote some affirmations. I did some yoga and some stretching, and then I meditated for about 11 minutes. So sometimes it changes. During the summer, I do more outdoor activities, but no matter what, I always start my day with these 3 basic elements, my way, and I'll give you lots of suggestions in that video. So I highly, highly invite you to this because you are here for a reason. I know this. I've been working with women for over 20 years now on a coaching basis. And I know that once you start tapping into and remembering your inherent value and worth, you start to offer it out to the world, to your kids, to your partner, to your friends, to your parents, right? You become someone who's an inspiration to those around you. It's worth it. I promise you. And I'd love to hear how it went for you. When you do try it, leave me a message, leave me a review, make sure you subscribe to my podcast because it helps other people find the podcast. Every time someone subscribes, it invites iTunes to share my podcast with other people. So please subscribe if you haven't. And when you do the magic morning practice, I'd love to know how it went for you. So all you have to do is head on over to Instagram and DM me, message me, let me know how it was. I would love to know. I wish you so much health, so much wellness, so much joy, and to trust that exactly where you are right now is absolutely perfect. The journey is the journey, right? All right. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I hope that you got some value out of this. And I can't wait to see what happens and how this evolves for you and how it influences your life. I'll see you on the next episode of the Meditations and Musings podcast. Again, this is Elena Lipson, your self-care coach, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening and learning about the new divine self-care way of being in your life, business, and the bedroom based on the divine feminine metrics of success: pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. If you're ready to bust the myth of overwhelm and tap into an inspired start to each day, I've put together a free video series for you to help you start each day with energy, inspiration, and ignite that inner pilot light which attracts joy, magic, and synchronicity. You can access my 3-step magic morning practice to help you ignite your inner light and attract the abundance that you're craving. Head on over to elenalipson.com/gift enjoyed this episode, I would so love if you share it with a friend, a sister, a mother, a daughter, and please leave a review. That is how the magic starts to ripple out. Here's wishing you a day full of beauty, magic, and divine self-care. I'll see you next time at the Meditations and Musings podcast.